Welcome, everyone, back to Anonymous Addiction. I'm Bobby C. I'll be your host, and this is As Bobby C. Sees It. Anonymous Addiction deprogramming everything, not just AA. Now, today we have a we have a guest. We've been trying to hook up for the last couple of weeks. Konrad, my friend, I'm so glad. How he found me, I'll never know, but all I know is he hooked up. He contacted me. I said, darn, we got so much in common. I even said to him, I said, you don't really know how much we have in common. We got a bunch in common. Conrad's gonna share his story. He's gonna tell us some things about all kinds of stuff. First, I want him to share where we can contact Conrad, okay, and all his different platforms he's in, okay. Would you do that for us, Conrad?
Yeah, hey Bobby, thanks for having me. So happy to be here. I'm Konrad Rogoz. My website is truthandlaw.com, truthandlaw.com. You can find me on YouTube, just type in my name, Konrad Rogoz. Truth and Law is the website, and then everything else you could find from there. I'm of course on Odyssey, on BitChute for if and when they like to take my stuff down, which happens because I don't only talk about, the self, I talk about what's going on in the world. So that is where they try to mess with you.
Yes, sir. That's exactly. In these podcasts, I don't only talk about deprogram from Alcoholics Anonymous or any of the 12-step programs. I talk about deprogram. That's just a start, really, because we have to really deprogram from so much. And once you start, you can't go back because the veil has been lifted. So it's really fun. It's exciting. Tell us, another thing is Conrad is going to tell a story. Never been to Alcoholics Anonymous, hasn't been tainted, hasn't been programmed. That's the beauty of it. I bring people on that never even went to Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step program, living our choice. We choose this. We're living an alcohol and drug-free lifestyle. Let's talk about that, Conrad.
Yeah, well, before we get into the whole story, yeah, I never did. People tell me, how did you do it by yourself? You didn't seek any help, you didn't get any therapy, you didn't go to AA. Well, I wouldn't say exactly I've done it by myself because you don't do it by yourself. We need support, but it's just there's a big difference between having support and having a sanctioned, like you say, fellowship and this thing, this indoctrination, this programming. I've managed to steer clear of that. And that's always been in me. So I've stayed true to myself, actually. It's not that I've totally turned upside down who I was. I'm who I was. I just make different choices. And I think that's before the story even gets started, I think that's the moral of the story to begin with.
Power of choice, the freedom and power of choice. Beautiful, yes. So let's begin with that story, and because it needs to be heard. Let's hear some of it.
Sure. So I was born in Bielsko-Biała, Poland, south of Poland in 1996. Um, we grew up tough, right? Single mom. My parents split up early on, uh, and it takes two to tango. So I'm not blaming anybody, but there were really tough times. This is post-Soviet Poland, where you've had since World War II, this nation has never been free. It's been socialism. It's been communism, and then this is right around the time it collapses, and then there's this pile of rubble, this infrastructure where it's really tough to do anything. It's tough to keep the lights on. So that is what my mom was doing, working hard to support not only me, but my older brother. So it was tough, but I never went hungry. I hear all these crazy stories that for the most part, my home was a place I liked. It wasn't bad. Um, but it did make it for a bit of a lonely upbringing, right? A lot of this time I'm spending alone in the house, reading, watching some TV, things like that. And I think I mentioned this because I see that as kind of like the beginnings of what later would lead me to develop relationships with drugs and alcohol and develop relationships with people through drugs and alcohol. These are kind of the roots where there was a there wasn't a healthy balance of being alone by myself and then having relationships with other people, because a lot of this I spent in solitude, and long story short, of course, a lot of this has to do with women, with relationships. And growing up, didn't see it modeled, right? I've spent a lot of time with women, but I didn't spend a lot of time seeing what it's like to be with a woman and what a healthy relationship with that looks like. So over time, we come here, my mom and I, and my brother who was already here. We come to the United States, to Chicago, and this is 2005 now. So I'm 9 years old. I don't remember too much from my home country, so that is kind of why I can comfortably skip that gap, because the story really starts here, and it starts with being totally launched and dropped into like a whole new world, right? Which is a beautiful world. It was amazing. It was a dream, Now people freely travel to the States and here and there. It wasn't like that. And 96 and early 2000, it's like, man, if you can go to America, that is really a dream. And it was. But then as I'm going to school, I've struggled with this thing now to be accepted, right? To fit in. Uh, and this is kind of I've alluded to this, the kind of issue between liking yourself and spending time alone, but then also in a group, wanting to be somebody, wanted to be included, to have relationships with people. And that's tough to do when you're learning a language. And still, my mom is having to work very hard, because yes, it's America. You can make a living here, but you still have to work your ass off. So I'm still over here kind of, new to all this and trying to make my way here. And over time, one thing leads to another, and I kind of settled into this counterculture, these fringes of kids at school, kind of like I did in Poland, right? It wasn't that easy to form relationships, right? It wasn't bad. I wasn't bullied or anything like that. But for some reason, one thing leads to another, and I settled into this rebellious kind of niche, right? Uh, and having the freedom to do these things, if wanted to skip school, I skipped school. That's just what happened. And I'm thankful for that. It was kind of great, to have freedom as a kid. I think kids are so repressed and micromanaged and controlled. They never get to live, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, right? So I didn't really have those inhibitions. So when it came to, smoking some weed here, drinking some alcohol here, staying out, this is what I did, right? But now we're talking about getting into middle school and high school, and I'm still craving a relationship, but again, I'm still kind of a baby in this area. I'm still a little bit shy, a little bit timid, not knowing how to approach this area. So when I had a bit of a heartbreak, you might say a bad experience around freshman, sophomore year, this kind of drug and alcohol life was there for me. And then because and I settled into being a drug dealer, because what better way to get accepted, right? All you have to do is buy a little more of this, and now everybody wants to be around you, right? Now you can kind of be the life of the party. So around high school, I settled into this and really go off the rails. My story gets to be a little bit uh, a little bit like an action movie, because it did get to be that way. And women will do that to you if you let it, right? If you throw yourself all the way in, and that's what I did. And really, it gets to be crazy after I finished high school. I actually dropped out of high school with about like a month to go, just because
But can relate to that.
I might as well tell the story, right? There was this guy, was my ex, my girlfriend at the time. He was talking to her or whatever, and I was, I guess, known for being a bit of a jealous type, right? So I threatened him this and that, and the text messages went to the principal and said, "Hey, you can't do this. You're suspended." I said, "No problem," and I never came back. I never went back to school. So, um, and fu in a funny way, that is when my education started. That is when I really started learning.
Did you have to get a
After
G? Did you go get a GED or anything after that?
No,
See, good,
no, I
good
didn't.
point. Good point. You didn't
I
you didn't have
didn't.
to.
and I didn't, obviously I love learning, but to these degrees, I'm not saying it's bad to get a degree. It's good to get it if you know what you want and the thing you want to do determines or depends on you having some sort of certification. Go for it, take it.
Exactly.
But not for me. I don't plan to be splitting up my daily bread with any corporations. I just don't. I'm a project leader for a construction company, and I freelance, so didn't need it for that. I had to be thrown into the fire and start from kindergarten in that world anyway.
Yeah, it's almost like that's what we're lacking today is ground floor entrepreneur, somebody bringing you in, showing the ropes, uh, the trades in the trades field. When I was young,
Yeah.
everything was about trades. Now we're kind of lacking it. We don't need degrees for that. We could be on the job training and really get to know it. You can move up the ladder quick and you can become an entrepreneur in anything you want to do. But I want to touch base because I listen to your podcast, and if anybody wants to really listen to it, Konrad goes deep. He may be keeping it simple here, but he goes real deep. Okay, very deep, where it hits me to the heart, and I gotta say to myself, Bobby, you got to step up and make some changes. At my age, I'm open to change still. I'm open to learn, and that's an important thing. You talked about on your last podcast. You talked about the boundaries that we were lacking. Uh, you talked about boundaries, how important they are as a child. We think that as parents, we think, oh, if we give them too much boundaries, we're going to be too strict. I was one that was lacking in that in my parenting too. So luckily I had my wife; she was a little stronger. But your last
Mhm.
podcast really was emotional dependency. So continue on, but them boundaries that you were free. Was alcohol and drugs actually like a kind of a benefit for you at that time? It gave you something, not good, but it gave you something to be able to cope.
Yeah, it did. The part that kind of goes unmentioned is while this time I talked about drugs and alcohol and everything, all this whole time, like 2013, 2014, I'm in severe depression. Like I'm contemplating suicide all the time. So this is like on the edge of life and death where I just didn't care what happened. But actually, it did help at this time because I got from being basically so depressed that I don't do anything to now, hey, I could do whatever I want. And it's not that it's a healthy thing to do, but it is the path I needed to go to at least get some motion into my life. Because even if you're going in the wrong direction, if you're not going in any direction, that's called death, the seizing of motion. So at least I got going in one direction, then to be able to turn around from that direction. So that's what that lifestyle did for me. And one part of this is it helps you be more comfortable, right? So that is what I needed, kind of.
Yeah, it helps us because we don't have the knowledge or the information that we needed anyhow. So we deal with the information and knowledge we have and go with it, which is limited at that age for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Another thing is it kind of drops all the expectations. I had all these unreasonable expectations for myself, like especially towards the end of high school, where I think I'm supposed to, I don't want to disappoint my family, my lineage. Like I've always been very proud of the history of Poland with the Nazis and the communists, and in general, like I've always been about freedom. I've always been a rebel at heart. It's just unfortunately my rebellion went into that direction where it became destructive to me. So I had these expectations for myself, not even that anybody put on me. I put them on myself. So then when I was somebody who just went into drugs and alcohol and selling it, you just don't care. And you know, I needed that. I needed that. And then over time, I lived up to those. I'm living up to those expectations without the expectations. I'm just doing it because I know this is what I want. It's not this looming thing over me that I need to now, even now, to be like an example for people, to be doing all of these podcasts, to do all these shows. It's really not a burden on me. It is just expression coming from within. And that is what I always needed to learn. And that is the way I got sober, right? To be living this lifestyle. I had to really find myself and and go back to the origin, to all of these the sources of all this pain and trauma, you know?
So let's continue from you dropped out of school, you just left school. Yeah, suspended,
Yeah.
great. See it.
Yeah, and by the way, what you said, I want to tie it into this because you talked about trade schools and everything. That is what I was lacking in the first place that made me turn to drugs and alcohol, which is lacking an example. School is great, but you need to go see the master and apprentice relationship. You need to see the person doing what you need to learn how to do, and you need to see how they do it. And then you try to emulate that. So again, it's the same thing, you know. Uh, and this is the whole thing as parents that we need to do, right? Parenting is a whole trial in itself that I've yet to experience, and I know I'm getting ready for that. I know it's going to challenge you, right? It's going
Yeah,
to show you
I'm
about
still
yourself.
being challenged. I still screw up. If my daughter's listening, she realizes that I still screw up, and my wife and whoever. But I'm still learning, and I'll still continue to learn. You left school.
Yeah. And I
That's you left school. How far now? Now where you at? How old? Where you at? And where you going?
now I'm just more, I have more time, I have more freedom to be more of who I was trying to be, which is like like a big fish in a little bowl, like a little Pablo Escobar type. This is who I wanted to be. I wanted to be like Al Pacino. I wanted to be like these guys. So this is what I was doing, and it went that way for a few years on and off, like about 3 years, and then starting in 2019, I the destruction that I was causing myself and basically people around me, it kind of started to overflow. In 2019, I got in an accident. This one actually was was not my fault, as according to records, but I don't remember because I don't even remember what happened because I was working. I was working late nights at that time, so about 5 a.m. I'm coming back from work and a car hits me oncoming. Kind of, he was turning left, so it's like 40 miles an hour each direction. So it's like hitting a wall at 80. Uh, and they somebody happened to be walking their dog at 5 a.m. and called 911. Ambulance happened to be like 5 minutes away, and they took me right to the operating table, cut me open because I saw in the pictures I'm swollen to like twice my size, like internal. I had a ruptured spleen, so they cut out my spleen. My liver was lacerated, then collapsed lung. They had to, poke the little hole in there to get that thing back up. Uh, a couple broken ribs, and they had to cut the door open to get me out of there. It looks like right where the driver was sitting was just crushed, but I was in there and I got out. And that should have been my wake up call, but unfortunately this kind of drug and alcohol thing, it's a bumpy road, right? It's not a neat uh it's not a neat thing where you get a wake up call and then you're fine. So many people have all these relapses. And I did, of course. That was a wake up call. I really had a couple months after that where I knew when I was in the hospital, like, hey, I got to get out of here. Like I was just face to face with death. I need to change my life, whether it was to blame for that or not. Like I need to start living different. And I did for a few months, but with this stuff, if you don't heal the origin of the problem, life eventually is going to beat you down a little bit and your chinks in the armor are going to get exposed. And that's what happened with me. And I went back to the same kind of things. Uh, then the end of 2019, now the pandemic hits and all of this. And again, the routines change, right? Again, the life becomes so much different. And I started partying again. I was doing all these things now back into it now, and I actually had money because of the insurance settlement from that accident because it wasn't my fault. So a guy like that with no inhibitions, a lot of money. So, I bought a lot of drugs, I bought a lot of guns, started buying jewelry, and I was just basically it was one long party, for a few months that went on. Then all the way fast forward, not the whole time, That's kind of it's not a nice, neat linear story. And I think that's how it is with a lot of people that had this experience. It doesn't make for such a nice little book with easy chapters. It's very twisted. There's ups, there's downs, that's how it goes. But now October 13th of 2020, I had a second car accident. This one was my fault. I bought a nice Infinity twin turbo, bought the car with cash. It wasn't even insured yet. And I flipped this thing. I was drinking. I flipped this thing over. It went 360. There's actually a video of it.
I hope
Uh,
somebody's listening to this, okay? One of my little friends there, because he really can relate to this story. So keep on sharing.
yeah.
So you flipped the car two, three
I flipped the
times.
car. I fell asleep driving it, and you could see in the video I'm just veering off of the road, and then I hit something. I flip it over, and then you see like this white smoke starts coming out of the car. The nurse told me this car caught fire when I was at the hospital later. I don't know whether it did, but it definitely started to smoke. The crash woke me up. So the first thing when I woke up, now I just was drinking whiskey out the bottle like just before this. I went to go buy some. Since I'm being honest, I went to go buy a hundred Xanax pills because that's what you do. You could buy 100 Xanax pills for $200, sell them for 500. So, but I didn't, this is how I lived. I just didn't care. I'm just like, okay, I was bored. Let's go do something. Let's get it behind the wheel and drive and just do something. So that's what I did. As soon as I flipped the car, I tried to turn it back on. I'm thinking I'm going to keep driving. Like, this is how reckless I was.
Upside down, right?
Yeah, boy, then I landed
Oh,
I landed like a
you
cat.
flipped.
It was
Okay.
upside down flip, landed like a cat.
I'm
So
laughing
I'm trying to
because
turn it on, doesn't work. So I'd start going like this, and it's amazing looking back on it, what kind of the kind of adrenaline that you have. But I punched through the sunroof, and this thing breaks, cuts my hand. I start crawling out, and I'm thinking in my head like I'm about to get out of there. But then seeing I was so concussed, and there are people around me now, and they just kind of grab me like, and I think, okay, all right, my fiesta is done for the day. I waited. I went um, to the hospital. Didn't I avoided being charged with the DUI that time. It was, I don't know, city of Chicago is interesting sometimes. One day
that
they get you,
time,
one day they
that
don't.
that time there.
Yeah, that time I didn't. I got away with it that time. But I was in such a haze at this time that even when I got home, they kind of put me back together. They sewed my hand up. I go out later that night to drink and do cocaine, like later that night. It should be recovering, like I'm hobbling over to do this. It was crazy. That was not a wake-up call for me at all, because there comes to be a time where only rock bottom is going to turn you away from your ways. Maybe that's not the experience with everybody, but that's what it was like with me. I had to really be, I really had to hit that rock bottom to bounce off of it. So 2 weeks later, that happened. I had another long party and everything. And in the morning time, actually, I drive my friend's car to get something done to go to the store. This is like 9 in the morning. And again, I'm sleep deprived, and it was just a little fender bender this time, nothing. But at this time, I actually flee the scene. It was like a little bump, little collision, but I'm leaving to go back to the hotel room, and this is all by my house. It's pretty embarrassing, It's like I'm in my apartment where I live, and I'm staying at a hotel like 5 minutes from my house and doing all these ridiculous things, crashing into somebody who's like a regular working person. I'm being basically a menace to my own environment. But I did that. Then they caught up to me. I actually arrested me at the hotel room. And that is when I got charged with my DUI. And that should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. I had one more week where I kind of went all out, and that is when I had some soul searching, because I know I have this like legal issue looming over me now. It's like decision time coming soon, but I wasn't ready for that decision yet. Uh, and seeing those people, it was like a 4 day just binge, and the different people I saw during that time, over time as it was coming to an end, and I kind of felt this finality, and it was a decision that I knew either I'm choosing to just really be a criminal and I'm going to die this way, or I have to look myself in the mirror, humble myself, and have to go the long way about this. And that's what I decided, and that was November 3rd of 2020. And then I've been sober since then, So I've been choosing an alcohol and drug-free lifestyle since then. And that was only the
4 years.
beginning,
You
right?
come a long man, 4 years, because I'm listening to some of your podcasts, and uh, you come a long way, my friend, a long way.
Well,
But
that's kind of the unfortunate thing is that I had potential the whole time. I was really I had no business throwing away these gifts that I've had, this potential that I've had. And I think that could be said for anybody who's living this kind of lifestyle that's destroying them. Everybody has gifts. The people who think they don't, they just haven't found them yet. And what we're doing is really throwing away something precious. It's not that we have to, be grateful to this outside force for giving us life. How about being grateful to ourselves, your family, your loved ones. Everybody's just a different reflection of themselves. We're all here together. We're all individuals, but we all come from the same source. So without getting too deep into that, all I'm saying is, we have to really have some compassion for ourselves and not throw this thing away. And yeah, I've come a long way, yes, but I've wasted a lot of time too. It could have
yeah,
happened earlier. And
we got, you know what? Believe it or not, we only we had 9 minutes on this podcast. I'm gonna check with Conrad, see if he can do another 30 minutes. If not, we'll get back in the next week. But maybe he will. Maybe he'll be able to do another
sure,
30 if
I
we got
will.
time. Yeah. Because the second phase of this, we're going to go deep now. We're going to go a little deeper into universal law, natural law, cause and effect, mentalism, all this, how this plays into addiction, and how it plays into our rebirth, and our deprogramming, unlearning and relearning new different things, because everything's a program. uh Continue though. 8 minutes is a long time.
Okay, well, the way I was thinking about this, the story ends there, but of course the story only begins there. In December, so that was November where I make the decision that I'm going to change my life. So at this point, I'm still recovering. Actually, the little fender bender, that little accident, was more damaging to me than the previous one, which was like a stuntman kind of event. It's just
Superhero,
my
you
arm,
got
and
out of it. Yeah, superhero,
yeah,
I made it out of it. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was just unhealthy in general, right? And this whole time I'm eating unhealthy, I'm thinking unhealthy. Of course, my sleep habits are terrible, not to mention the drugs and then the withdrawal from them. I was taking, not only was I drinking habitually every day, I was smoking cigarettes. That was like normal to me. Smoking marijuana, that's normal. But to me, that even like brought down my high. I was doing a lot of cocaine. I was taking Xanax and Vicodins, kind of like switching off with other things. I'll take some LSD here and there and other pills. Like I was selling oxycodones at the time, which knowing it now, when they sell these little blue pills and they're 30 milligram oxycodones, they're marketed as that. You're really taking heroin. You're taking uh, synthetic opiates. But they're printed. You could tell. But anyway, this is the kind of stuff I was doing. I had colorful bags. I was just like popping them like candy. And then over time, I actually transitioned I was doing so much cocaine that my nose was like not handling anymore. So I started smoking it. I actually for a few months, really more than a few months, but on and off, I was smoking crack. So this is hard drugs we're talking about. So of course, that comes with a withdrawal. But I think if you have to quit something, you have to quit it all at once. And I think that uh, I'm not saying you have to, but it was so much that, well, it's gonna hurt anyway. So you might as well get it all out of your system.
Yeah,
So
let's
that
just make it
November,
let's make it clear to the audience. This is Conrad's opinion. This is his concept. This is perception of his reality, of his recovery. You want to call it recovery, of his alcohol and drug-free lifestyle. Mine too. I concur with, that's the type of lifestyle. But we're not telling you what to do. Okay, we're not telling you
exactly.
what's the best for you. So we just want to make that clear, so you don't come back and say, Bobby, blah, 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 blah. So let's clear that up. Go ahead, Conrad. You got
Absolutely, yeah.
5.5 minutes.
No problem. Yeah, that's how it was for me. And I've kind of always wanted to be like that. I wanted everything, you know. I didn't want to just have one friend. I wanted to be, you know, cool. I wanted to be the life of the party. So, um, you know, the same kind of things that I made bad choices because of, I make good choices because of now. I still feel extreme emotion. I still want things very intensely. But you can make the decisions that turn that into beautiful and productive things, not destructive things, not just cycles of habit that bring you down. I think there are blessings in these things that people only see as curses. I found your perspective, how you talk about this. This is what I see in the way you talk about these things. One of the things you said is about jealousy, that you don't think jealousy is necessarily a bad thing. And I love that because I'll still get jealous. I'll still be like, man, you know, but now that motivates you to do something. You can think about it rationally. Hey, I don't want to bring this person down because they have something that I perceive as wanting, or, you know, I'm thinking that I should have that and not them. That can push you to be better, and that helps not only you but everyone around. It's, you know, there's no original sin with this stuff. We're all addicts. We're
Mm,
never gonna change. It's that is garbage.
yeah,
Now, my way of coming out of that, which is cold turkey, everything at once, that's my personal view. The fact that you can change this through your own action with support, I can say that unequivocally, whoever you are, that choice is there for sure. But to wrap this up anyway, you know, November, December was kind of this time where you're dragging yourself out of this grave. I started writing music. I wrote 30 songs in 30 days that December.
wow.
Uh, started doing music. Then over time, I got kind of once my health got up, I made a channel in 2020, 21, 22. I made this decision that I'm going to speak out about freedom, right? That I actually got that courage up, that now I'm going to follow all these things that deep down I wanted to do. Now I'm going to get this kind of appreciation and admiration and respect that I've always craved, but I'm going to do it the right way. And to me, that's the way to get out of a drug and alcohol free lifestyle. There are great things in this world. You just have to earn them. You don't take the shortcut to get them.
That's right. That's right.
Day by day.
We got 2 minutes left. We're gonna close it off softly here. Hopefully, last podcast I did, we missed it, but we're not going to miss it this time. We got 2 minutes. When we come back and do number two, okay, we're gonna do two. We're gonna do the second part of this. We're going to get into a lot of other stuff that we share in common that isn't really talked a lot about in the recovery field, okay? Because we're not just deprogramming Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 steps, or any of these other programs, the recovery trap, because it's the recovery industry is a trap. It's designed, it's a well-designed mechanism to trap us and keep us in place. So we're going to go a little further because we have a bunch of stuff in common, and we're going to start sharing it on the second podcast, and we may go down the rabbit hole a little deeper. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Just send us out. We got another minute. Send us out with something you want to share with the public to stay tuned for the second podcast.
Uh, I I love that I've never shared my story like that publicly. I've said it a couple of times. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. And what I want to share is that, well, sharing is how this gets out there. So to everybody watching this, just share. You don't know who you're gonna meet. We would never meet if it wasn't for both of us being content creators, you know, just putting this stuff out. Everybody second guesses themselves. Everybody questions, hey, what I have to say, does it even matter? Do I even take the time to put this? Like, who's gonna, you know, is it worth it? It's worth it, you know? It's worth it, and you develop these relationships, and this is what we've all been deprived of. This is what alcohol and drugs substitutes for us. A real connection.
That's right. This is the real deal. We got 1 minute left. We're going to just sign off. Everybody, peace. Don't forget to subscribe to Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming Podcast and stay tuned for the second version. We're going to be talking about one great network. Huh? Coming back. And we knows where I'm going to go with this here. Let's see how you stop this here.